For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night.
Welcome to the Jester Section Hiker Podcast, where we talk about the continual pursuit of the section hiker.
And I'll spread the word, and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come. And we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods.
Welcome to the Jester Section Hiker Podcast. I'm your host, Julie Jester Gayhart, and this is the podcast where we talk about the continual pursuit of the section hiker and what it takes to complete a trail section by section. For me, it took 12 years to section hike the Appalachian Trail from June of 2006 until July of 2017. I'm an educator by day, but a hiker at heart. I'll hike north, south, backpack, slack pack, day hike, or even these days, glamp to get the job done. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Jamie Willis, aka Mighty Mouse, joins us on today's episode of the Jester Section Hiker Podcast. Jamie loves to go on shakedown hikes, has written an article for The Trek titled Short Tips for Short Backpackers, and in addition to section hiking the Appalachian Trail, loves hiking in the Dolly Sods area of West Virginia. Jamie has section hiked on the AT in the states of Maryland, Pennsylvania, and half of the 100-mile wilderness. Welcome to the podcast, Jamie.
Hey there.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. I want to start off with the obvious on how you got your trail name, Mighty Mouse.
Well, for the listeners, they can't see. I'm 5 foot tall. I'm barely 5 foot tall. So a few years ago,
I don't know why I found that funny, but I'm laughing because I can see you smile.
So a few years ago, when I first got into backpacking, I was brand new and I was always at the local REI, probably once a week, once to every 2 weeks. And of course, I was new, so I was there for the Cadillac of backpacks. It weighed about 5.5 pounds. And of course, it was all brand new gear, so I didn't know anything about lightweight backpacking. So, I was putting all the awesome looking gear in there. So I had a pretty hefty pack.
But your pack itself, did you just say that it weighed
5.5 pounds
itself?
Itself.
And what are you, like 100 pounds? So you added, and there's nothing in your pack at this point. So the pack itself is 5.5 pounds.
Absolutely. It was a beast. I mean, it carried weight beautifully, but it definitely showed my newness to the backpacking.
And I think that happens, nothing against REI, but I think that happens there a lot. I mean, because I have a similar story, but keep going.
Yeah, so I was there all the time. So everybody knew me by name, but because they had seen me, and had guided me with everything, they decided to call me Mighty Mouse because I was so little with this huge, giant backpack, 60-liter backpack. And it weighed so much itself with all the brand new heavy gear inside.
Okay, we won't even get into that right now, but so fittingly so that you were named actually while you were, looking into getting your gear, buying everything and going in there all the time. So Mighty Mouse is absolutely perfect, which leads us to, you wrote an article for The Trek titled Short Tips for Short Backpackers. Talk to us about why you wrote that article and how you ended up as an author on The Trek.
Well, I thought that there really wasn't enough out there for people that are short like me, because it is a special challenge to be vertically challenged and carry as much as you need to carry for backpacking. And I just didn't think there was enough information out there, just not enough people talking about it. And so I reached out to the Trek. They had an online Google form for writers' applications, and I just did it on a whim because it was something I wanted to do. Writing for backpacking, a really well-known backpacking website was a dream of mine. And so they contacted me back, enjoyed my idea about short tips for short backpackers because they agreed. There's probably a larger audience than they know. And it was just, they were intrigued by it. So I wrote it, and it was broken down into some different ideas. I think it was about 6 different little clips of ideas that, some are applicable to, everybody, but some are very specific to being, vertically challenged and having all that weight.
Nice. Well, first of all, that is really cool because the Trek is extremely well known. And for you to have something published on there is totally cool. So just so the audience gets an idea, just rattle, what were those 6 things that you wrote about? So
the first one I said was to cut weight, not comfort. Definitely because being shorter, you do want to be mindful of how much stuff weighs. So for instance, something I talked about was going from a jet boil stove, which is kind of heavy, to a small Snow Peak Giga stove with an igniter, because that's my comfort. I don't want to carry a lighter around, so I'm going to bring one with an igniter. So I did cut down on weight, but I didn't cut down on comfort.
Oh, that's smart. That's very smart.
The other one was, if you don't want pain, you've got to train. I learned that in the 100-mile wilderness, which we'll talk about later, I'm sure.
And that goes for everybody. For everybody.
Absolutely. Trekking poles are your friend and essential for water crossings for us short people. You need them. It's no ifs, ands, or buts. You need them.
Agree, especially up there in Maine.
Oh, yeah. We were lucky when we were there. The water was very low compared to what I've seen on the videos.
Well, and I imagine the trekking poles are vital for you as well, and those huge rock step downs. And those are in every state. It just depends. So that's vital as well.
Absolutely. Another one that's I think is really important is not to compare yourself or push yourself too hard to keep up with taller hiking partners. My main hiking partner, One More, is 7 inches taller than me. And so I try my best to keep up with her. But at the same time, I also try not to compare myself, that it's much easier for her to go much faster and much farther than I am, especially up hills and stuff like that. So it's just important not to compare yourself to that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
And the last 2 were just repackaging food and knowing your water sources, because both of those things have an impact on the weight you're carrying. So if you repackage food, it weighs less. And especially because the food portions out there for, typical backpackers are too much typically for, my caloric needs. And the water sources are the same way. If you want to carry less, then you need to know where those water sources are and how much you can get away with.
Very good. And yeah, that the water and the food are, people always say, oh, my pack weight is X, but most of the time it is without water and food and maybe some different essentials that people carry. Was that the 6th one?
Yeah, that was it. Those were all of them.
Perfect.
I hope that was 6.
Well, okay. All right. Well, we will definitely 100% put the link to that article in our show notes and give you some kudos for that. And that will help not only, I don't want to say short backpackers, but those are tips that everybody can adhere to, especially with the weight, because no matter how long you're hiking, whether you're a section hiker, day hiker, whatever, everybody is always looking at their weight and what they want to carry. So we really appreciate you talking about that. During our initial conversation, you talked about Nick Offerman from the TV show Parks and Rec. How does he connect you to the Appalachian Trail?
So I like to blame him for the whole thing. He's well known from Parks and Rec, but the way I found him, and then it was the catalyst for my backpacking endeavor. It was the winter of 2015, 2016, and there was this little clip going around on YouTube of Nick Offerman as like the stereotypical REI green vest. He's like talking about the ripstop nylon of the tent and 3 season versus 4 season. And it was just hilarious. And I watched it over and over again because I had a friend at the time who was working at REI. So we found this hilarious because it was stereotypical. It wasn't true, but it was also, some of it did sing true. Then someone told me, oh yeah, that's from the movie A Walk in the Woods. And I was like, well, what's that? I have no idea what that is. And then I downloaded the audiobook and listened to it twice. And I was hooked, and I decided I was going. Not the whole way, obviously, but I'm a teacher, so I had spring break off and I made all the plans to go.
Nice. Very good. Well, maybe somebody out there in the listening audience knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that can let Nick Offerman know what he did for you. So we're putting it out there to the listeners. Help Jamie find Nick Offerman. All right. So let's move into your section hiking. So in 2016, you began, kind of getting serious about your section hiking on the Appalachian Trail. And you went out on some different trips, and a particular theme began to come about: getting sick, getting hurt, and going blind in the 100-mile wilderness. Tell us what that's all about.
Well, I don't know what it is, but it seems to be a tradition. And since the last time you and I have talked, this has increased again. So every time I get excited about some actual section of backpacking, something happens. I'm sick. I fall towards my face. I go blind because my contacts decide they're going to rebel against my eyes, and I go blind for 2 days.
Oh no.
Most recently, I got sick. And then my orthopedic doctor was very worried about a stress fracture. So I have an upcoming section hike coming up next week or soon. I've got breaks coming up. So that was almost put to not happening because of that. So lots more. Just suffering is just, it seems like a theme with me in section hiking, but it doesn't stop me.
You got to stop planning. You just kind of got to just go. That way the aura around you that is causing you to get sick before you go doesn't happen. But as a fellow educator myself, I understand those breaks and getting stuff planned and really wanting to get out there. So in 2016, all joking aside with getting sick and getting hurt and stuff, what were those first sections that you went out on? And tell us a little bit about maybe the logistics of the trip and how you planned those.
So the first one I went on was the spring break of 2016. It was Harper's Ferry, and the intention was to finish at Penmar because our friends at REI had said that was the easiest place to start with, great terrain, great amount of time to do that kind of mileage. And we thought because we were athletes that would be totally doable. But I was sick.
There I am laughing again.
And I was sick.
Only because I know exactly what you're thinking when you say that. That's all. It's all in good fun.
Oh, absolutely. But I was sick, and we only lasted 3 days because it was a lot harder than we thought. And a thunderstorm was rolling in. But I was absolutely hooked. We stopped at the Washington Monument, and I remember sitting in one of the pavilions there, and I had peeled one of my socks down, and there was a dirt line. And it was the first moment, it was oh man, I'm hiker trash. This is great. I'm so cool. I'm hiker trash. This is going to be me forever.
And then you went home and got cleaned up, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I kept it for days. No.
So that was your first section. And another thing that we talked about, a cool thing about being a section hiker and in that mode of not having to go in a straight line north, not having to go in a straight line south, it's real convenient that you can plan your next section. So one of the sections you planned was to skip up to the 100-mile wilderness. Tell us about that trip.
Well, that happened just because I was ready for a new challenge, especially because I've spent most of my time between Harper's Ferry and Pennsylvania. So I'm very familiar with it. I've hiked Harper's Ferry up to at least Ed Garvey, Gatlin State Park, or Penmar Park 5 times.
Okay. Yeah.
So
hey, why not, right?
So I know it very well. So it was time for a change. So it was January of, I want to say 2017. I had purchased all those main maps, and I laid the 100-mile wilderness out on One More's floor. And I was like, hey, You want to do this with me in the summer? It'll take us 2 weeks. Let's do it. And one more had never like backpacked like that before, but she was like, oh yeah, I'm in. Let's do it in June.
You've got me laughing this whole time, and I'm not quite sure why, because I mean, literally I've been there. Like, it's like, yeah, let's do it. And you have no clue what's ahead of you.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh no, you're fine. I looking at the maps, man, the maps are a big liar, by the way. All of the maps of the 100-mile wilderness are big fat liars. They don't tell you.
Jamie, going forward, don't look at the maps, okay? Just stop. Just stop.
They're just liars. Like, and going back to like the short tips for short backpackers thing, it's built for like a typical person. It's not like, hey, if you're, 5 foot tall and you're going up this incline on this rocky cliff, you're going to have to bring your knee up to about your hip, or your foot to your hip joint, and then lift yourself and then 30 pounds of weight on your back.
Well, I don't know about you, but some of those places in Maine, I was lifting my knee up to my chin, trying to get places. And then like your pack weight is like, I mean,
it pulls you back.
Some of those places are, it's ridiculous. So, but we do it. So, here we go. So what happened in the 100-mile wilderness?
Well, we stayed at Shaw's Hiker Hostel the first night before we were going to be shuttled to the trailhead, and it was awesome. I had never been in the hostel setting before, and I absolutely fell in love. Hippie Chick and Poet are just amazing people, and I was taking my contacts out in the bathroom, and when I took my one out, it felt like someone was stabbing me in the eye. So I washed my eyes, which is apparently what you're not supposed to do when that happens.
Oh, no.
So I went sand.
Did you stab yourself in the eye with those maps?
Probably. To see them better. But, so one more was like, all right, keep them out for a couple days until your eyes feel better. And finally, on the third day, I put them back in, and they were still kind of hurting, but they were bearable. So, I was ready to see what I'd been hiking.
Right. Especially in the 100-mile wilderness, you kind of need all your wits about you.
Oh, yeah.
So you guys ended up doing half of that. So talk us through that.
Well, that was really hard. And it was a really hard decision on my part, because I really felt like I was taking away from One More's experience. She had no problem. I got hurt because I hadn't trained. I hadn't been doing any kind of exercise whatsoever. And the terrain was it just beat me up completely. So I ended up straining the same muscle in both legs. And I remember sitting, I can't remember what the name of the road was, but my legs were just splayed out in front of me, and I was looking at the maps, and I was looking at Katahdin, and I was like, this is just not going to happen. Like, I can't do this. And I started to cry, and I told One More, and she's like, it's okay. At least we had the experience, and it's been a lot of fun. And like, there's been a lot of crying for me. And so we bailed out at Joe Mary Road, where they were resupplying our food.
Gotcha.
Instead of like resupplying us, we did drink our beer, but then we shuttled back to the hiker hostel.
Gotcha. And the good news about that is, as far as we know, the 100-mile wilderness is not going anywhere. So Joe Mary Road will be right back there waiting on you when it's ready for you to go again.
Oh, absolutely. I've got my eye on it.
So during our initial conversation, you said something that actually really resonated with me and took me straight back to the trail when you said it. You said that you like to hear the crunch of your own footsteps. Tell our listeners how the AT makes you feel and why you will continue to section hike.
Well, the AT just takes me to a whole different place in my mind, in my body, everything. And honestly, when I told you that, I was thinking of a very specific moment, and it was on a spring break hike with my other hiking partner, Sunny Bunny. We were hiking towards Pine Grove Furnace State Park. That's where we were on our way to. And she had meandered further up the trail from me. I couldn't hear her anymore, but it was packed dirt, and there were some leaves on the side, and that's all I could hear because it was spring. The birds weren't out yet. and there weren't enough leaves out there to make enough noise in the trees, but all you could hear was the wind through the leaves on the ground, rustling a couple at a time, and the pounding of the boots on the dirt, and the pounding of the boots on the crunching of the leaves. And it's just peaceful. And like, it's such a mindfulness that I don't get anywhere else in my life, that I just keep chasing it. And I can't get enough of it.
I understand. Ever since you and I talked about that, even this morning, I was trying to be real quiet out on a local trail and just listen to my own feet. So I agree. That's like the coolest thing. So as you move forward in your section hiking, you mentioned you're currently trying to work on like your nutrition, your mindfulness, and chasing that good feeling. What do you mean by all that?
Well, the nutrition kind of goes back to the short tips and stuff like that, because I have unique nutritional needs being a shorter person. So I'm trying to figure out with my nutritionist how to fuel properly during section hikes and longer hikes. You know, if you're starting to trip, what should you start to do? Oh, I should start to take some sugar in. But I want to make sure it's not some kind of sugar that's going to make me crash and feel nauseous, and finding out all these different intricacies about what's going to work for me as a hiker. And, you know, my hiking partner, Sunny Buddy, is short like me, not as short, but so I can share those insights with her as well. Mindfulness, I'm just trying to be more mindful in my own life too, to transfer that feeling I get out on the trail into my normal life. Being a teacher can be extremely stressful. So I try to bring back those moments from the trail into my daily life. Just, you know, like we were talking about the crunching of the leaves, that whole experience, I try to live that sometimes in my daily life.
And then continuing to chase that good feeling goes along with crunching those footsteps. And another, I mean, quite honestly, another beauty of being a section hiker is you're not done yet. So you can continue to seek out different sections of the trail, continue to plan those trips, continue to, you know, put in those miles until you complete the AT. And if you're like me, you'll probably just start doing it again. So I totally
That's
agree.
awesome.
So another place you like to hear the crunch of your footsteps is in the Dolly Sods wilderness area of West Virginia. So give our listeners a little bit of insight to the Dolly Sods area and why you would recommend them to go there.
Well, I like to call Dolly Sods heaven on earth for me. It's just a completely different world out there. I love it equally to the Appalachian Trail, but things are just different out there. The air is different. Everything's different. You can be walking through a pine forest 1 minute, and then you're in a boulder field, and then you're in a regular forest, and then you're in a cotton field, and then you're at 3 rivers connecting to each other. It's just a completely different experience to be in all that differentness. I can't think of a better word for it.
I know. Well, as you're saying this, I'm trying to figure out why I haven't been there. So I need to add that to my list of places I need to go check out. It sounds great. I don't know about the boulder field, but it sounds great. So yes, we will definitely add that and add that to the listeners' places of where they need to go hike. So you mentioned also in our initial conversation that you enjoy listening to podcasts about hiking. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on there. Obviously, you're a fan of podcasts. So why are podcasts important to you?
It's community. It's hanging out with those people that get it virtually. You know, it's not a back and forth, but it's like sitting around a campfire with people that just get what you feel and get that need to chase that feeling. And, you know, I chase it with reading too, as much as I can, but it's a different experience to hear it. And it feels like I'm getting to know people that, you know, I'd probably get to know if I was through hiking, but I'm not a through hiker. So it gives me kind of that through hiker experience while being a section hiker, and just, it's a family. And, you know, I only have about 3 people in my life who get it. And that's one more water spider and Sunny Bunny. That's it. They're the ones that get it.
Right.
And that's 3 people. So
listen, I totally understand. And that's one of the reasons why Steve had the idea to bring this podcast on, is because there's a lot of section hikers out there, and we want to give section hikers their voice in their own podcast. So thank you for that. Really appreciate you saying that. And what's next for Mighty Mouse when it comes to section hiking? What are your future plans? What do you got in your mind long term?
Well, right now I want to through hike the Batona Trail, which is a 50+ mile trail in New Jersey.
Oh,
so I want to through hike that. And then I want to start connecting sections.
spell that
up in
for me. How do
Pennsylvania.
you spell that?
Batona. It stands for Back to Nature.
Oh, Batona.
Yeah, Batona.
Oh, nice. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. So you got that going on. And what else do we have?
I want to start connecting sections in Pennsylvania. I do want to hit Shenandoah soon. I still haven't seen a bear, so I'm ready to see a bear.
Well, you'll see one there. I can go ahead and tell you that.
And then I think I want to start going south a little bit. I've been very much north based, and I think I want to start going south.
Nice. So long term, Mighty Mouse, do you see yourself completely section hiking the trail, or do you see yourself, maybe one day doing a through hike?
Oh, I'm going to live the dream. I'm going to through hike. Just don't know when yet. Got to find the time and the financials, but that's definitely going to happen. It's not a if, it's a when.
Do you see yourself completing it as a section hiker as well?
Yeah, definitely. I've got enough time, enough summers.
Indeed. Well, very good, Jamie. Now we've come to the point in the podcast where the guest is going to sign off for us by reading their own journal entry, statement, or quote that will inspire us to keep hiking section by section.
Our shakedown hike began along my favorite stretch of the trail, starting in Harper's Ferry, meandering its way along the towpath, moving up to Weaverton Cliffs, and finally ending at Ed Garvey Shelter. Our hike up to Weaverton Cliffs had a dual purpose for me, and one more dragged me along as fast as she could up the incline to make it there before the sun set. The summer before our hike, my mom had lost her battle with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and passed away on July 21st, 2017. We had her cremated, and I had brought a small bit of her ashes with me on the trip. My goal that day was to share my favorite spot on the trail with one more and my mom, and spread her ashes at a place she asked me about over and over. When she was alive, my mom was intrigued by my backpacking and asked me repeatedly to tell her stories about my adventures. Harper's Ferry and the surrounding bodies of water held special meaning to her, as she used to travel its waters and camp on its banks when she was little. My wish was to share my favorite place with her and take her to places that her body had no longer allowed her to do at the end of her life. The day was windy and cold, so windy, in fact, that when one more talked, I could barely hear her from feet away. We rushed up to the top of Weaverton Cliffs, navigating switchback after switchback until we finally reached the top just as the sun's rays began slanting along the rocks. At the top, I moved toward the edge and said a few words to my mom, throwing her ashes to the wind. And this is where my mom had the final laugh. Because of the direction and strength of the wind, when I threw her ashes, they came right back at me, and I sputtered, laughing hysterically. My mom had always had a dark humor, and I felt that this experience was her having her last laugh.
Thanks, Jamie. I really appreciate you being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie, for being on the podcast. Jamie had me right back to the trail as she was explaining her thoughts on chasing the good feeling and hearing the crunch of her own footsteps. Thanks for sharing your passion for the trail with us. Next up, we have Let's Talk Gear with Steve Kammeyer as we continue our talks about gear. Welcome back to Let's Talk Gear with Steve Kammeyer. On this segment, we are going to ask Steve to talk to us about a piece of gear that I think is overlooked in our gear kit, the headlamp. The headlamp is essential when it comes to safety in the backcountry. Welcome back to the podcast, Steve.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
All right, really appreciate you coming back and chatting with us. So let's get right into it with talking about the wide variety of headlamp options out there for hikers and backpackers. I know there are various brands, various ways they are charged, and how much lumen power is actually needed. Give us some things to look for and think about when we go to purchase for the first time, or actually those of us that are thinking about replacing our headlamps. Talk to us about what we need to be looking for, Steve.
Sure. I think really the first thing that people think about is brighter is always better. And that's just not the case. Brighter means it costs more, and brighter means that you're carrying some more weight then too. A lot of people think that they need a 300, 400, 500 lumen headlamp, and that just isn't the case for most people. There
Come
There
on,
are times. No,
we need to be able to see everything all around us, right? At night.
I know. Some people think that, and that's why I'm probably half blind in my eyes too, because headlamp etiquette. But we'll get into that in just a minute. First, let's
now
talk.
there is a whole headlamp etiquette. Yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah.
So talk to us about the lumen, because I feel like the higher the better, and the higher I need to get.
Right. And you're not wrong in that thinking. You're just wrong in that thinking. But I actually did a kind of a unofficial poll of Appalachian Trail hikers a couple years ago. This was a big interest to me because I had so many customers coming to me and saying, I need something that has 350 lumens, or I need something that has 500 lumens. And I'm thinking to myself, why? I don't, what are you doing that you need so much light? And actually, believe it or not, the average number of lumens that is used on the Appalachian Trail is between 60 and 80 lumens. That's it. You really don't need a whole lot more than that. And there's we're talking about battery power then too. Headlamp life. If you want to burn 350 lumens, you're going to be burning through batteries really, really quick. So there's just no reason to have all that headlamp, and you're still carrying that much extra weight, and you're paying that much more up front.
Right. And you're also carrying a ton of extra batteries as well, unless you're, then you're getting into the whole USB charging style headlamp as well. Right.
And I think that's where we're going to be headed next with this is, a lot of people think, oh, hey, well, I'll get one of those USB charging style headlamps and I can charge it off of my solar panel. Well, if you're hiking the Appalachian Trail, you're not going to get too much sun. You're in that green tunnel the whole time. So you might be hiking all day long and really not have enough solar power to charge up the headlamp fully. And you might have other stuff that you need to have charged too, your phone, a power brick, whatever. So, stuff that might mean a little bit more to you than what your headlamp would be. So yeah, you definitely have to think about that, especially when it comes to how you're going to power this. If you plan to use solar power, make sure you're hiking in an area where you're going to get sun.
Right. And what about, I know for me, I'm like, oh, I need all the power I can get because I'm going to do a bunch of night hiking. So is an 80 lumen power headlamp really going to do it for the night hiking versus like a 300 or 400 power headlamp?
Absolutely. And again, I guess this all just really depends on what trail you are on. I personally, I do have a 350 lumen headlamp that I use when I'm nighttime mountain climbing in the snow, where I literally am on, 1,000 foot per mile steep grades. And I need to be able to light up a good chunk of this whole mountain. So I don't want to cliff out. I don't want to get lost. I don't want to die.
Right.
So I really need to have the extra light there because you really might have to see what's ahead of you, a quarter mile ahead of you. If you're on the Appalachian Trail, you don't need to see a quarter mile ahead of you. You just need to see about 6. You just need to see about 6 feet ahead of you. That's really about it. So there is definitely a time and a place for those super high lumen headlamps, but I really just in general, a lot of folks use and have way too much.
And I know there's different brands, and there's different. There's Black Diamond. I can't even think of all the brands. You go into a big box store and they've got them all lined up. And it's like this one, this one, this one, this one. So if I'm brand new into going to get a headlamp, I don't know if you could recommend a brand. It doesn't matter to me. Sure. Like all I hear is Black Diamond. So my mind, I'm going in, I'm getting a Black Diamond, kind of walk me through what I'm looking for.
Sure. And I'm a huge fan of Black Diamond myself. I was a retailer for them for quite a long time when I lived out in Salt Lake City. If you get anything from Black Diamond, you're safe. You're gold. It's just a matter of picking out the right model for you. Petzl is also another super, super high quality, well-known brand. If you buy from either one of those two companies, you are good to go every single time. Now, I think another thing that people need to be thinking about too is the options that come on these lamps, because nowadays there's just 1,000,001 options. You can have a strobe light, and you can have a locking light, which is actually really nice. I know there's been more than one time that I've had my headlamp in my pack hiking during the day, and things have shifted around, and all of a sudden my headlamp accidentally gets turned on, and when I go to use it that night, it's dead. It's been on all day long.
Yeah, that is very true. Yes.
And I had no clue. So a locking function is actually really good. Red light, green light, those I cannot speak enough about, especially red light. Red light is super nice because it's the purpose of it is it lets your eyes stay relaxed. So if you're, I'll say a female, and I'm gonna get screamed at for this one. But if you're a female that wants to wake up and go potty 3 times during the night,
hey, listen, that's what happens. Okay, we don't have certain luxuries, so we got to have a good headlamp so these things can happen.
As long as I have a tent vestibule and a square foot of space, I'm good to go. But no, there in that case, the red light on your headlamp is actually really, really good. So rather than putting on the white light at 350 lumens and
I do agree with that. Yeah.
Crack and dawn, you can just turn on your red light and you can go do whatever you need to do your business, and come back and you can go right straight back to sleep. Your eyes never get adjusted to the light. Same thing with the green light, which is great for reading or just for kind of hanging out in the tent late at night. We've used the green light to play cards and read books and do whatever we want to. There again, where we don't have to have 300 lumens shining on us. Most headlamps nowadays are dimmable, which is another great feature. And for those people like yourself that think you have to have the sunshine on your head, I strongly recommend using that dimming feature because you're going to save so much battery power. I mean, it is incredible how much battery power you will save. So you buy a headlamp that maybe has that capability of 350 lumens, but only use what you need. And you have to be conscious about that. If you don't need 350 lumens, dim it, because you'll be surprised that 60 to 80 lumens is all that you need usually. So
all that you need. And like you said before, you're just burning that battery.
Right.
For no reason. So as far as cost, like what am I looking, because I know they go from, I see them at, home improvement stores for $19, and then you go to some, bigger box stores and they're $195. So what am I looking at as far as cost?
Right. Some of the best on the market, and I'm going to use Black Diamond here because that's what I use. And I think I have one of every single model of headlamp that Black Diamond has ever made. And that's not a joke. The Black Diamond Spot, Storm, and Cosmo are probably some of the 3 most famous and most popular models of Black Diamond headlamp. Those range anywhere from $30 to $50, which is really not a bad price at all. And you can catch those on
really
sale.
Reasonable.
Yeah, and you can catch those on sale constantly. And actually, not a lot of folks know this. They really have a really excellent customer service program too. So even if you do drop it or you break it or whatever, just give them a call. You'd be surprised. They might just send you a new one free. So it's really hard to beat for that $30-$40.
And another thing I just thought of, those headlamps, what about the waterproofness of your headlamp? Is that something to be concerned about?
Yes and no. Again, it kind of depends on where you hike. I know that I had the unique opportunity to attend the Outdoor Retailer Show in Salt Lake City a few years ago, and I walked in, and Black Diamond had a kiddie pool that was like 3.5 feet deep with like 75 headlamps in there, just flashing, blinking. Some were on red, some were on green. It was like a party going on in this swimming pool. So those are what is considered. And if you're looking for something waterproof, if you are going to be hiking and it is going to be wet, most of these things are highly water resistant. But if you know that it's going to be wet and you're going to be doing some nighttime hiking, you want to be looking for something that is at least IPX8 waterproof. And the IPX8 is just a basic ranking. It's kind of like a 1 through 10 type thing. But
okay. Another thing I had no clue about. I did not know there was a ranking on that. So that's
yes.
another.
Yes. Some are considered splash proof, and the IPX8 it's actually a waterproof, and it's waterproof for up to 3 feet for 30 minutes.
Okay.
So, and those just happened to be the ones that Black Diamond had in the whole swimming pool, which was just really cool. I wish could show you guys a picture of it because it was just a party in a pool.
Well, very cool. So it sounds like we need about 60 to 80 lumen. We need to, have a headlamp that locks in case it goes off in our pack during the day, so we have our light at night. And you're looking at $50 or so for a really good headlamp. So really appreciate you talking to us about that, Steve. So today our guest question actually comes from the Backpacking Gear Review and FAQ site on Facebook. This question actually had over 60 comments once it was asked. And here's the question, Steve. What do you use for bear country? A canister or a bear bag? Looking for advice for a bag versus a canister. Okay, so this is a big topic, so go for it.
Oh, dude, you put me on the old spot here. Okay, well, first of all, First of all, it 100% depends on where you are. There are times, especially in some national parks, where you absolutely must use a bear canister. And the most popular ones out there are the BV 450, the BV 500, the Garcia, the Barricade. And what those are solid plastic or carbon fiber jugs, basically. They are heavy.
Right.
They are extremely bulky. And the bad thing about those is if you're not carrying enough food to fill it all the way up, you're not using the whole thing and you're carrying extra stuff for no reason at all whatsoever. So there have been times where I've had to use the BV 500 and I haven't had enough food to fill the whole thing up. So I'll shove an extra shirt in there or an extra jacket or whatever. Just make sure that you use all of your available space. But I definitely do not recommend using the BV 500 if you don't have to, because the thing weighs like 3 pounds by itself. It's big, it's bulky, it takes up a lot of space in your pack. The only nice thing about it is it makes a nice seat. you can sit on it.
That's what I was thinking about, but I don't really want to carry a seat. So
right.
Is that the huge one? I mean, that's the really big one. So the smaller one, what's the name of that one? It looks the same, but it's just about half the size. That is the BV 450, which is, I mean, I can put about 3 days worth of food in there easily. I could probably, if I really, really wanted to skimp on calories, I could probably fit 4 or 5 days worth of food in there. Okay. And how much food is the big one holding?
The big one, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever, however you want to look at it, a lot of folks that are on the JMT, which we're not going to get into all that, but if you're looking to have to be out there for 8 or 10 days without a resupply option, and you're in a spot like that where you are absolutely forced to use a government approved bear canister, you are stuck using the BV 500. And once you get that puppy loaded with 8 or 10 days worth of food, I mean, you've got 15, 20 pounds there easily. It just becomes a big mess.
Yeah, that's it. And then you've got, and quite honestly, I've actually had some friends of mine, kind of say, oh no, we don't want to go hiking there. We'll have to carry those, big bear containers and things like that. And I can see why. It's just, you kind of weigh your options. But there's also in the question, it says bear bag. And I don't think they're talking about an actual, you're going to throw your, ditty bag up in the tree. I think they're talking about maybe the earth sack or something like that, using that versus a bear canister.
Sure. And I mean, honestly, in a lot of ways, it is the same thing. I mean, I personally use something similar to the earth sack, but it's not an actual earth sack brand name. The one thing that Ursac has going for it that your typical ditty bag or food bag doesn't have going for it is that they are bear proof, in the sense that a bear is not just going to grab it and rip it open with its teeth and go to town on your food. And of course they do that in certain situations because they don't want the bears to eat the food, because once they eat the food, they start coming around more often, and then all of a sudden you got bears eating people, and that's not a good thing at all.
Right.
Again, and an Ursac is not a bad option. It's much, much lighter than your typical bear canister, but those things are expensive. They cost more than a bear canister does, actually. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, but again, if you're and those are so new. I mean, those have only been out for a few years now, and those are starting to be approved at different national parks or different national forestry areas. So the one thing that I absolutely must stress is check the rules and regulations before you go, and then once you get to that point, don't take any more than what you have to.
Right. And you don't really, you want to check the rules and regulations, and you want to be around people that have done the same thing, because, I've always said, like, if, one person doesn't hang their food, it's like everybody else hangs their food, but if they're going to sleep in the shelter with you've kind of defeated the purpose.
Right.
So,
right. Yep.
You kind of want to, be cautious of what people are doing around you as well.
Right.
And one last question about either the sack or the bear canister. I've often wondered myself, are those like smell proof as well?
No. The simple answer is no. You can't. There's no such thing as a smell proof container. A bear has a sense of smell like 1,000 times better than us. So really, no matter what you do, a bear is going to end up smelling it. The main thing is to get it up in the trees. Like you said, get it far enough away from camp. That is the most disheartening thing in the world, to set up camp for the night and then have some idiot come in beside you and literally just throw his food on the ground right there beside you when you're in bear country. Because then you're either
not good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Then you're either in that whole conversation about trying to educate somebody about bears, or you're packing up camp and moving down the trail a little way so you can be a little bit safer. But yeah, I think that is one of the most important things, is learning how to hang a bear bag, whether it's a traditional bear bag, like you say, ditty bag, or whether it is the Ursack. You still want to get it hung. You want to get it up. You want to get it off of the ground and get it away from you. Because if you've got food and there's a bear in the area, they will find you. Exactly,
Steve. All right, Steve, really, really good information about the headlamp. Awesome information about the bear bag and the canister. Really appreciate you joining us on another episode. Again, listeners, we'd love to have Steve answer some of your gear questions on the podcast. So if you have questions, please send them to me via email at jesternc2212@gmail.com. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night, heading toward the morning light. I wonder if you'd wander with me, and I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods. You're wondering if I go wandering with you, what kind of trouble we'll get ourselves into. Would it be wrong to tag along with a band of vagabonds? You wonder if I'd wander with you. So I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods. I'm wondering if you'd come wandering my way, if you ever get lost or if the trail leads you astray. The music of the pack can always bring you back. I wonder, can we wander away? And I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods.
Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of statistics, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and an enormous selection of players and stat options are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million football fans who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/get100 and use code GET100. That's code GET100 at prizepicks.com/get100 for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.